Welcome to The Writing Life, the podcast for anyone who writes. My name's Steph, and I am your host for this episode, flying solo whilst my friend and colleague Peggy is away on her holidays. And as always, I'm speaking to you from the podcast room at the National Centre for Writing, our home in Norwich, UNESCO City of Literature. September has started and the kids are back at school, which seems like the perfect timing for an episode all about children's literature. Today, you'll hear from Hayley Wells, an Essex-based illustrator who spoke to my colleague Ellie a little while ago during their visit to Norwich for the City of Literature weekend. Hayley has an MA in children's book illustration from Cambridge School of Art. Their work has been shortlisted for the World Illustration Awards, featured on television and published worldwide. They sat down with NCW's programme officer Ellie Reeves to discuss The Spectacular Suit, a picture book written by Kat Patrick, which celebrates individuality, identity and self-expression. Together, they touch on the relationship between writer and illustrator, their advice for people wanting to develop ideas for a children's book, and the value of representing yourself and your experiences in your art. So I shall hand over now to the experienced hands of Ellie in conversation with Hayley Wells.
Hi, Hayley. Thank you so much for joining me today. We are going to spend some time together talking about individuality, identity, and self-expression, particularly thinking about children's books, since you are, of course, a fantastic children's book illustrator. But before we get into our chat, I think it's really important for anyone listening to situate us, because this is a pretty special podcast. We are recording this right in the middle of the City of Literature Festival, which is a part of the Norfolk and Norwich Festival, and it's a collaboration with the National Centre for Writing, where we get to spend a whole weekend celebrating books and literature and all the wonderful conversations that come from that. So we have just finished a fantastically fun hour, interactive storytelling and kiddie craft activities, all centred around The Spectacular Suit, which is a beautiful children's book written by Kat Patrick and illustrated by you. So how are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling good. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. So yeah, I'm great. We had a lovely response to the book. Lots of kids absolutely loving the craft activity and engaging with the story in their own way. So that's, couldn't hope for a better experience.
Definitely. And actually, as I'm looking at you, on your waistcoat, there are a series of golden stickers that you seem to have been adorned with.
Yes, I did have a very enthusiastic fashion designer come up to me at the end and stick all of the leftover sticker bits. And to be honest, I'm kind of loving it.
Yeah.
So, adding extra texture to my waistcoat.
It's a look, definitely.
Yeah, I'm here for it. Yeah.
That kid's going places. So let's get started with some context. How did you end up in the world of illustrating children's literature? What were the draws for you?
So I have a pretty, I would say slightly boring route into illustration. It's quite linear. I studied illustration at the University of Lincoln, worked in children's publishing at Usborne for a few years, and then went off to do a master's in children's book illustration at Cambridge School of Art, which is relatively prestigious course. And it was through that I was able to get my first book deals, one of which was The Spectacular Suit. But yeah, it's very much something that I've always wanted to do. It feels a bit cheesy to say that sometimes, but I do genuinely feel very lucky to be able to live my childhood dream and to be able to make books every day. It's really a great job. Love it.
Well, you're very good at it, so that also helps. The Spectacular Suit, which was the focus for our event today, and is just beautiful to read and to watch kids enjoy. It follows Frankie, who's our protagonist. It follows Frankie deciding what she is going to wear before her birthday party, which is a very, very big deal. Very bothered about the birthday party. And she doesn't want to wear any of the dresses, and she doesn't want to even wear her favourite jumper. And can you just give us a quick kind of run through of what happens in the book? What's the journey that we go on?
Yeah, Frankie is working really hard to make sure her birthday party is right. It's the first time she's ever had a party, so she's really excited about it. All her family and friends are helping. And then she realises that actually she's not going to feel quite herself if she's forced to wear one of these dresses. I say forced, it's not quite as intense as that, but she can't figure out how to feel like Frankie, and she sort of has a bit of trouble communicating this to her family as well. So we see at one point her drawing her ideal suit, her ideal outfit that she wants to wear, but because it's so close to the party, she doesn't feel like she can ask for it. But fortunately, her family find that drawing that she did, and they're able to in secret make her the outfit of her dreams. So when she wakes up on her birthday morning, she finds it there and it's exactly what she'd imagined. And I have to say, it does look quite spectacular.
I would agree. It really, really does. The double page spread of the reveal of the suit. I shan't say more because you'll have to go and find the book and open it to that page for the full effect. But it really was quite a special moment.
It is, yeah.
Really build up to it.
Yeah, that's very much my favourite moment in the book. And I think it's interesting because it's the only point in the book that is sort of outside of reality, I suppose. Everything else is quite grounded. And then that's a point when we get to see Frankie sort of in her kind of gender euphoria, I suppose, kind of flying through the sky and surrounded by all of these swirls and stars and visual ways of representing her joy at wearing this amazing suit. And that's, really drawn from my experience. When I find the right clothes, it's important.
Definitely. And I really want to come back to, in a moment, this link between when you're writing children's fiction and when you're the author and the illustrator, putting yourself kind of in that. So I'm really looking forward to touching on that. And I would say that The Spectacular Suit, it's a simple, easily digestible story about a child who just wants to wear a fabulous outfit for her birthday, in short. And that's such a relatable childhood experience. I mean, I remember as a kid, I would accompany my mum to Asda, but only on the condition I was allowed to dress as a pirate. And there are fantastic photos as proof. and there's something similar there. But there's clearly another layer to the story, which people can choose to see or they can choose not to. And you and Pat have fed your experiences in. So I would love to know, how do you, as an illustrator, and perhaps if you do have any insights from the writing perspective as well, but how do you try to balance having this very digestible, easy, fun story on the surface with this kind of layer going on underneath? Or did it happen quite naturally?
Yeah, I think it's quite natural. I know, both Kat and myself are non-binary. So I think it's kind of natural that we would draw on our own experiences. But I think from Kat's perspective, we were careful not to make the book solely about gender. It's very much more than that. It is a part of it. But we've also got this storyline about the family coming together and really embracing Frankie for who she is. I had other people interpret the story as being of a neurodivergent struggle, because Frankie doesn't actually say anything in the book with words, which is kind of interesting. And there's lots of those layers, but I think the gender stuff, the reason I think that comes across the way that it does is because it's coming from two people who have lived that experience. And I think that really speaks to the value of own voices, authors, kind of the phrase that we seem to be using a lot in publishing. But yeah, I think it's really important.
I love that. And just for the benefit of anyone listening, do you want to define what you mean by own voices, authors? What is that coming to mean?
Yeah, so really it's, if you have a story that has an element of something like being non-binary or transness, as I suppose you could interpret with this Spectacular Suit, that those types of stories are told by people who have lived those experiences.
Yeah, I think that makes lots of sense. And I can see that as well. Of course, you're working in the realm of children's literature, but it's very clear that that's showing up across the industry at the minute and leading to some really interesting blending of fiction with autobiography and memoir and these kind of new spaces. Creativity will always evolve, is by its nature what it will do. I think this is just a new area of that we're seeing. And I'm saying new, I'm sure someone listening is thinking, actually, this has happened before and now we're kind of back again. And I love that. And I'd say that identity and self-expression are pretty common themes in your book. We had the pleasure of witnessing another book of yours, which does a very similar thing of exploring those ideas. But I would also say that, these themes, they continue into young adult fiction. They continue beyond that, but they definitely continue into young adult fiction, in the coming of age story, in the self-discovery story. The ones that really sprung to mind were things like Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson series, which was a love of mine, which is all about Greek mythology, but it's set in a modern day New York. But in reality, it's about someone finding chosen family and learning who he is and coming to terms with that and loving that, amongst many, many other things. And even kind of the really humble origins of Alice Osman's Heartstopper, which started out as a kind of a webcomic on Tumblr in little snippets. And then now it's a Netflix series.
It's incredible.
It's just mad. And I think it's really clear to see that these stories are everywhere and they really capture people's hearts.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, I think, at least when I was growing up, sort of in the 90s, that there'd be many things like that. And, I didn't kind of discover my gender identity or my sexuality until my mid-20s. And that feels depressingly late. And I know that, other people come to it even later in life. And I think a big part of that is because we don't see ourselves represented in stories. And if you're, consuming media and you don't necessarily have role models in direct life around you, why would you think that you're different in a way? Like, you might not realise that that's actually even an option for you.
Yeah. You've got some time to see it, and then that can really help you to understand yourself.
Yeah,
definitely.
exactly.
Yeah. And do you think that you're going to continue to pursue self-expression and identity and kind of just the general themes that are coming up in these books as a bit of an umbrella theme for where you might go next with your books? And I suppose I have a follow-on question, if I may, which is, how much control do you have over the direction that your next books will take, or the books that you get involved with? Is it you? Is it publishing industry? Kind of how does that work?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because, Be True to You came after The Spectacular Suit. Both were initially Australian publishers. So I think the success of The Spectacular Suit there led to sort of being discovered, I suppose, by another Australian publisher. And then since then, I've worked with a different Australian publisher on my next book that's due out this year, which is not quite exactly on the same lines, but sort of in the same ballpark, I suppose. So yeah, it is quite normal, I think, once you've done one book, the publishers to kind of see something in it and be like, oh yeah, this person, really gets this sort of emotional topic or able to draw children in this particular way or something. And so naturally the books that you are offered tend to kind of reflect the ones that you've already done, which is lovely. And I do love exploring this particular topic well, but it is also interesting in contrast to the first book that I wrote and illustrated, which is just doesn't have any humans in it at all. It's about strange sci-fi dystopia with little creatures. And it can be as different. It's completely different. So yeah, it is a snowball effect. Maybe. Yeah. It's maybe like a bit of a snowball effect where
the portfolio builds.
That's it, yeah.
Well, lovely. I'm actually really glad that you've just mentioned your first book that you illustrated and you wrote, The More Monster.
Yes.
Yes, because I wanted to ask you about this because it is so different in the topic that it's covering, but also because it was your first and because you wrote and illustrated it. There's so much there. There's such a wealth of things I want to ask. And a lot of our listeners, a lot of the work that we do is about providing insights into creative process and into craft. And I'd love to know what your advice would be for someone who, say, has the idea for a children's book and that is all they have.
Okay.
What do they do?
I mean, just start writing, I guess. And you'll consider yourself to be someone who draws, then to try drawing things as well. In fact, I say that even if you don't consider yourself as someone who draws, I think it's useful just to kind of visualize things. I personally struggle to do just one or the other when it's my own project. I sort of need to kind of work on them in combination. But I think that's in part because of the visual nature of my work and the way that my brain works. But yeah, really just to get some ideas down on paper and then see where it flows from there. Most children picture books are 32 pages, or like very long, but it's a real challenge sometimes actually editing a story down to hit all of the beats of a story in that short space.
I'm interested to know why.
It's to do with the printing and the way all the pages sit on one giant piece of paper and then they're cut down. So basically you can get an entire book out of a huge A0 or whatever size piece of paper it is. So yeah, then it's flipped over, printed on both sides. And yeah, that's why it's 24 or 32 is the standard. Sometimes 48 if you're lucky.
Oh, 48.
Yeah.
The tome of the children's literature world. That's really interesting. And of course, you also have experience working as the illustrator alongside a writer, which is a slightly different experience to working on it yourself. How was that?
Yeah, I really like working on other people's texts. I find it helps me to be a lot more focused. There tends to be fewer changes because you've got more people involved. So the manuscript tends to be set and maybe there will be minor edits or rephrasing things, slight word changes. But for the most part, the beats of the story will stay the same. So then it's a case of finding the right visuals to match the text, which is sort of, like illustration at its very core. Whereas when you're writing your own text and illustrating it, you can change a bit of text, and then suddenly that changes all of the images. And then you can change an image and suddenly that changes all of the text. And you can end up in this sort of cycle where, might not actually make any decisions. And we went through a lot of revisions with The Moor Monster. It's completely different book to the book that my publishers first saw when they gave me my contract. So yeah, and for the better entirely. Yeah, rewritten many times.
Whereas the process with, say, something like The Spectacular Suit was it, assuming overall, a lot quicker?
Yes, it's more straightforward and quicker, yeah.
Do you have a preference?
Yeah, it's in terms of practical workflow, I think I prefer working on other people's texts. And I also really like the fact that I have been asked to illustrate things that I might not necessarily have thought of myself, and that feels like a nice challenge sometimes. But yeah, I do also, I miss the total freedom, I suppose, that you have as a writer. But I think my next book that I write, whenever I get round to that, I plan to do something that's a bit more straightforward, so hopefully has many revisions.
Yeah, we have the privilege of talking to a lot of translators, and so we gain a lot of insights on the relationship between an author and their translator.
Yeah.
And sometimes the author may actually have passed away, and so then it's a different conversation, and that back and forth is fascinating, and that sharing of creative vision and of agency and all of these things. And it's interesting, even in a children's book, even when we put it all down to 32 pages, still the same kind of rules apply. I love that. It's across all the creative forms that come together to make the book. I wanted to have a chat about the detail when making The Spectacular Suit. So I know that you got sick about halfway through illustrating the book. I'd love to know, for you as an illustrator, how does that impact on the style and the kind of the way that the book comes together?
So yeah, with that book in particular, I think I had done a couple of spreads of artwork before I got ill, and then I was effectively bedbound for several months. So I switched from doing more traditional work to working directly on an iPad. So I think I can see where the digital work is, and maybe other illustrators or people who are very, have a keen eye can probably see, if they look closely, where the difference is. But yeah, the main thing was that I just had to find a way to be able to work from my bed, and the only way that I could do that was with an iPad and Procreate. So I would just sort of work in really small bursts and do maybe one colour layer at a time, have a big rest, and then do another bit. So I was sort of worked in like really, really tiny little pockets of time. And yeah, my publishers were amazingly supportive during that time. They were very grateful to them.
Oh, that's nice to hear.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Procreate. Was that the software that you used, just in case we have keen illustrators?
Yes. Yeah. A very affordable, but very powerful software that you can get on iPads for about £10 or £20, I think. It's incredible. Yeah, really professional. Replicate quite a lot of traditional drawing techniques with it, and sort of download brushes and other things to help your artwork look more like it's been hand drawn. So that's really helpful. Yeah.
I wonder if there is any other softwares or techniques that you've come across since starting out in this line of work that you think might be useful to share if anyone is interested in exploring it.
Yeah, Procreate's the big one. To be honest, at this point, with the way that generative AI is kind of creeping in, I have actually sort of returned a bit more to using traditional media in my work and using Procreate as sort of like a way to just tidy things up at the end and sort of add those little flourishes and tweak colours and things like that. But yeah, generally like exploring more traditional hand-drawn techniques so that it feels like it has definitely been made by human hands. So yeah, that doesn't really help in terms of anyone who wants to get into digital art necessarily. But
I think that's very fair. Yeah. There's something to protect there.
Yeah.
And you're seeking to protect it.
Yeah.
And the books that then are created as a result of that. I mean, I've had the pleasure of holding them, of reading them, and the impact is really wonderful. So I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Carry on doing what you're doing. And children's books, generally, they exist alongside the wider socioeconomic context that they're being published into, whether we want them to or not, they simply do.
Yeah.
And I'd like us to look at the possible responsibility or the role, perhaps, that they serve in the hands of consumers and families. So your books, they provide colourful, gentle and fun ways for children to digest concepts like grief and identity, even capitalism, I think I can say.
Yeah.
and how we relate to one another as well.
Yeah.
And creativity comes from the heart, and authors are often deeply tied to their books. Children's authors, young adult authors, all of them. I've met many, and they all care deeply about the product that they've created, that it's got a piece of them in it. So when that book enters the world, the reactions to it can be surprising and uplifting. I know this particular suit had some special moments in the spotlight, some really lovely things. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, so I was really lucky to have had the book read on television a couple of times, in fact. So first of all, in the UK, it was read on CBeebies by Phoebe Bridgers at Glastonbury Festival in 2023, I believe.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was a real highlight for me. And I actually listened to her album Punisher that came out in 2020 when I was making the artwork for the book. So it was really like a nice full circle moment for me. And she wears incredible suits all the time. So really like couldn't think of a better person.
And now we know why.
It was really cute actually. They made a teddy bear with a suit that looked like Frankie's suit from the book. That was really, really cute. Just holding that in promo pictures. Adorable.
That's amazing. Love that. But then, of course, we do also have the flip side.
Yes.
When literature enters the world and the creator might be faced with negative reactions. And the negative reactions to the spectacular suit are interesting because this is a children's book, but the negative reactions are deeply rooted in right-wing politics.
Yes.
What happened there?
Yeah, so the book was read this time in Australia on their sort of BBC equivalent, and the guest that they chose was Courtney Act, who is a drag queen. I love her, she's excellent, and she was chosen because the book is ultimately about dressing up. So they chose someone whose job it is to dress up. However, it was not received in that way by some right-wing politicians in Australia. I say politicians, I don't even know. I think it was just one guy in particular felt that it was inappropriate for a drag queen to be reading a book about dressing up on television to children. And this is a narrative that we hear over and over again, that it's inappropriate for drag queens who have very adult content to ever be allowed around children. It's not okay, and it's just such a flimsy excuse for just sheer homophobia, queerphobia, transphobia. Because, there is nothing inappropriate in the book. Courtney is there just in her glorious outfit, looking like a grown-up Barbie doll. Just why wouldn't a child want to watch this, right? So anyway, the book was discussed in Australian Parliament, and the same politician spent time talking about the message of the book and how it was, again, not appropriate for small children to be told that they should wear this or wear that, and particularly seemed caught up on the idea of little girls wearing trousers when actually little girls should wear skirts. And, just inherently creepy. I'm sorry. You should just stay out of it. It's not for you.
Yeah, and thank you for talking so honestly about that. It's very clear that this book and the message in it is deeply personal. It's linked to the experiences, as we've said, of both you and Kat, the writer. And when reading it, I would say that the joy that I felt, it's palpable in the book, and it's the joy that I think any human being can have when they witness another human being in front of them being their authentic self.
Exactly.
And finding a lot of happiness in that. This is a child in this book. This is a child who wears a fabulous outfit, and everybody around her, everyone who loves her so deeply, tells her she looks great.
Yeah.
And that is all that happens in this book.
Yeah.
That is the truth of the book.
That's it.
And the fact that someone would choose not to seek joy and find joy and reflect joy in that is quite sad.
Yeah.
I would say it's quite sad. And I have no doubt that Courtney Act looked like a Barbie when
It's incredible, yeah.
But I wonder, because it's quite a strong reaction for a politician to have had to your text that then led to that story being discussed in a sphere where perhaps you never assumed it would matter. I'm curious to know if this experience has taught you anything about the importance of your own work, or perhaps the importance of own voices, stories, as we mentioned.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I really love about The Spectacular Suit especially is that it doesn't ever say this is a book about being non-binary or trans or whatever. It is just the story of one child, and people can take from that whatever it is that they want to. So it might be that a trans child reads the book and it finds it really affirming. And if that is the case, then wonderful. But similarly, a cis child can still read it and still enjoy it on a different level. They might enjoy it for the creativity, the fact that it's really colourful. You know, like there's all sorts of reasons and things that people can get out of literature. And I think it's important that we allow space as creators for our readers to interpret things in their own ways and to not be prescriptive and not say this thing is right or this thing is wrong, but to just, literally provide space for reflection. And to see, if people are able to see themselves in a book, then that's great. But equally, if they don't see themselves in that book, well, they might know someone else who is like that. They might have a friend at school who's like that, or they might have family members, other people in their community who do have similar experiences. And so it helps you to empathise with people beyond your immediate sphere. And I think that's, coming back to the political stuff, that is a big problem, is that people are very keen to put other people into boxes. And that's just a depressing way to live.
It's not a very childlike way to live.
No, it's
either.
not. It's not. No, children love to embrace different. People, they're very accepting.
They are accepting. That is until you disagree on what your favourite colour is, as I found out today. And I was given I've never been glared at quite like it by a young girl who had pen all over her face, but she did look quite fabulous. And I'm very sorry to that young girl, if she happens to be listening, very sorry. I understand now, I should have said pink. I understand that, and I hope that we can one day be friends. But I think on every other level, we probably align. So that was my mistake, and I've learnt my lesson. Thank you. And thank you for keeping joy at the heart of it. And thank you for giving kids these books.
Right.
Yeah. They're not having these debates. They just want to colour something in on the ground and get pen all over the floor. And steal my Pritt sticks as well.
That's it.
So you have got a book coming out in the autumn. Can we know a little bit about what's going on there?
Yeah. So that book is called Train of Thought. That is written by Jess Horn. Again, that is another Australian publisher. And like I said earlier, it's sort of a similar kind of ballpark in terms of being about finding self. But the main character in this book is, I think, very heavily coded as being neurodivergent, probably autistic. And basically he has a big imagination, rides off on his train of thought into these sort of magical lands of his imagination. Then needs a little bit of help from his family to come kind of back down to earth every now and again. So it's a very sweet story. And again, it's really lovely to have that family support represented in a children's book. It's as important for the kids as the parents to be able to see sort of models of family life and to know that it is possible to have supportive parents around you.
Lovely. And to see the creativity and the imagination that can come from it.
That's it.
Yeah. And that, of course, is what illustration often allows us to see, is what the kids aren't able to say. We were all one. I know, it is so shocking. But we were all one once, and we all remember that overwhelming imagination that you're just brimming with all the time, that doesn't really require words.
Yeah.
You're not really intending to share it. You're just kind of off enjoying it most of the time. Yeah. And being able to create a visual for that in a children's book is a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, it was a really fun project to work on as well, just for me as well, to have fun with my own imagination, creating all of these worlds, to draw lots of dinosaurs and UFOs and things. So very, very fun.
Quite jealous. I'm starting to think maybe I'm in the wrong. Not that I have any illustration ability whatsoever. I did a very good Bugs Bunny once. My claim to fame. But beyond that, maybe I'll leave it to the experts. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for chatting today.
Thank you for having me.
That's all right. I really appreciate it. We're going to crack on with the rest of our City of Literature weekend, which will all be wrapped up by the time that you are listening to this. But have a lovely rest of your day, and thanks very much, Hayley.
Thank you.
A huge thank you to Hayley Wells and to Ellie for their time. If you have any questions or you want to get in touch, you can find us at Writers Centre on Instagram and Blue Sky, or on Facebook, and you can sign up to the NCW newsletter, nationalcentreforwriting.org.uk. As a UK registered charity, we rely on the generosity of our supporters to make our work possible. You can make a donation on the website by going to the Support Us page. And if you enjoyed what you heard today, please do consider subscribing to the podcast and leaving us a 5-star rating and a review. This helps other writers and listeners to find us. Thanks again. Keep writing, and I'll catch you with Peggy on the next episode.